and I welcome our next panel speakers, and thank you all the audience who have been very patient, and I can see around 200 people who are on Zoom, and I think lots of people are watching us on the Facebook. Hundreds of them are watching. So I can see on the screen Mr. Harish. Welcome, Harish ji. Requesting you to unmute your.
Namaste, namaste.
Namaste, Harish ji. Namaste. And let me welcome Mark Parkinson's. Mark, hi. Good to see you after a long time. Mark, you are not audible, Mark. Yeah.
Okay, now?
Yes. Very much.
Okay. Namaste. And Dr. Ravi, is it true that they now call you the king of Zoom after the last few months?
I think we all here are kings and queens of Zoom now. After the lockdown has happened. So thanks, Mark, for joining us. You are right now in which city, Mark?
Kuala Lumpur.
Kuala Lumpur. So how is the situation in Kuala Lumpur? Is the lockdown still there?
Oh, I hate to say it, but the situation here is way better than India. And I only wish for all of you that you could get the same path to improvement that we've seen here. For the last 8 days, I think we've only had new cases in single figures and no death in something like 2 weeks. So nobody's out of the woods, but fingers crossed, it's a good place to be at the moment.
Good to know that, Mark, and thanks for joining us. And I can see Mr. Prabhakaran. Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Dr. Ravi Gupta.
Welcome. Thanks for joining. And I can see Jyoti Arora ji. Welcome. Dr. Jayshree Periwal ji. I apologize. Thanks for joining.
Pleasure.
And this background looks beautiful. Please tell us about it.
Yeah, this is my school. This is real.
So
exactly how it looks.
Wow. Like I have heard a lot about your school. I have heard that it's beautiful, but I can see it now that it's really looking very nice.
Thank you inviting everybody to Jaipur, to the Jayshree Periwal International School. Would love to host all of you.
Thank you.
That's lovely. Sure.
Thank you so much. And I can see Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni ji. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon.
Yeah, your head is a bit like half visible.
Oh,
so
sorry.
if you can.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, better now. Yeah. So thanks for joining, sir.
Thank you
And
very much. Thank you.
yeah, and who else? I'm like missing one more speaker. I can see. Yeah, it's Mr. Harinder Chhabra ji. Welcome.
Namaskar. My
Namaste.
pleasure.
Thanks for joining us, Harinder ji. And Dr. Vidhu Kesh Vimal. I can't see his picture right now. And did I miss someone else? No. Yeah, so we are almost like there. So let me request each of our panelists to please give a brief intro, just a 2-line intro for our audience, so that all of us are on the same page. So let me start with Mark, please.
Hi, yes, okay. Mark Parkinson, as you said, currently now based in Malaysia, where one of my most recent roles was as CEO of a group of 7 international schools. In the past, I spent two periods of 6 years each in India. The first 6 years in Ahmedabad. Then I went to Bangladesh for 2 years, and then I was back in India in Delhi and the NCR in Gurgaon. And that's me.
Yep.
Happy to be here.
Thanks, Mark, and I fondly remember our events you have attended, and I think your speeches have been always very, very popular with our delegates. So still remembering those days, and I hope that we will see you in a physical event soon.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you. And let me request Mr. Harish Sanduja to please.
Hi, Dr. Ravi Gupta. It's nice to be here. My stint with the schools in Delhi has been that I was working with Sri Ram School, and Mark sitting here was my boss. He's a boss. So I used to report to him when I was in Sri Ram. And then I also, once he left, I also left, and I went into Sai International School there as a principal, and then the director of Sai International School. Finally, I joined here in St. Anandram Jaipuria group of schools as director schools. So currently I am based out of Ghaziabad.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Harishji. And let me request Harinder Chhabra ji to please introduce yourself.
Yeah, of all the people sitting here, I'm probably the youngest in the education world. Launched a school a couple of years back in Greater Noida West, also known as Noida Extension. It's called the Infinity School. Passionate about the field of education, and probably that's why I'm here amongst this audience. Thank you for having me.
I think being young in the education sector puts you at an advantage, Harinder. So you are having the unfair advantage of age. Thanks for joining us, Harinder. So requesting Mr. Prabhakaran Nair to please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Prabhakaran, Headmaster from Lawrence School, Lovedale. This is located in Tamil Nadu, city called Ooty. And this is one of the oldest public school in India, 162 years old. Before taking over as headmaster here, I was in Doon School, Dehradun. I worked there for 30 years. I was Dean of Studies and Assistant Headmaster. Nice to be here. And thanks to all. Good to hear from all of you.
Great. Prabhakaran, like I have visited Ooty when I was very, very young, when I was in school. And I still remember the beauty it has. And I am looking forward to one day visiting Ooty again after all this is over.
Please do visit. We have maybe our campus is one of the largest campus in Asia. We have 750 acres land.
Wow! Wow!
Wow!
Amazing. Like how many years old school is this?
162 years.
162 years. Wow!
Established in 1858.
Wow! What a legacy you have. Great. So requesting Dr. Jayshree Periwal to please give a brief intro.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I'm based out of Jaipur, and probably the pioneers in bringing the International Baccalaureate and IGCSE in the state of Rajasthan. So we have 3 schools, one which is completely CBSE, one which is completely IGCSE, and one completely IB. And love children. And I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. And looking forward from learning from everybody and engaging with everybody.
Fantastic. And Dr. Jayshree, I have a question that how did you conceptualize this design of the school? This is so lovely.
So this is interesting. I wanted something really creative for the children because we want children to dream and imagine. So I took my architect to Orlando and I said, I want something like this. And he said, it can't happen. I said, form can always become function. This is what we're teaching to our children. So I told him, just dream. Don't do any work. Just have a holiday. By the end of the week, 7 days, he hadn't produced a single drawing. And he was so embarrassed that he really put in his heart and soul. And he came up with this design. And here we put it into action. And this is where it came from.
Wow.
So allow people to dream, allow them to do the impossible, and it will become possible.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thanks for thinking something out of the box.
Thank you.
And actually implementing it. Great to have you here. Yeah. And may I request Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni ji to kindly introduce yourself, sir. So you are on mute. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And well, I'm presently the director of Mayo College. But this is unfinished business for me because many years ago I was a student and I got caught out. So I've been asked to come back and finish the job. And of course, I'd like to make a comment, Jayshree ma'am, if you don't mind. I think your virtual background is not as beautiful as the actual building.
You are so kind and you're a dear friend. And thank you. My father is from Mayo College when they were just school students.
And your uncle was my classmate.
Yes.
Or your cousin, I think.
My cousin, my brother.
Yeah, Ashu. Yeah.
Ashutosh.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Surendra Kulkarni ji. And may I request Dr. Vidukesh Vimal to please introduce yourself.
I'm Dr. Vidukesh Vimal, and at present, I'm the headmaster of the Assam Valley School. The school is situated in Jaipur, Assam, around 3.5 hours drive from Guwahati. And we are in the middle of tea gardens. Our campus is one of the beautiful, I say that campuses in this school in this country, around 300-acre campus, lush green. And all around us, there are 10,000 acres of tea gardens. So in a way, we are very much in isolation, but yes, still we are very worried because next door neighbor, the cities, nearby area, 20 kilometers away, there are cases. But yeah, we are coping up well, and at present, our online classes and things are on, and we are doing quite well. Yeah.
Fantastic. When you talk about hundreds of acres, like we people sitting in a place like Noida, sitting in an apartment, are really envious of you. Great. So, and I can see Dr. Usha Reddy here. Usha ji, welcome.
Thank you.
Please give a brief intro.
So, I'm Dr. Usha Reddy and the CEO of Meridian Group of Schools from Hyderabad. It's indeed my pleasure to be part of this panel discussion. Well, we have 3 full-fledged campuses in the city of Hyderabad and, and running up to K-12. And we also have a chain of preschools, that we run. And talking about the situation, because I just joined in, well, I can see that some of them are very fortunate to almost, be in a lockdown situation very, very safely. But I can talk about Telangana. I think the number of cases are really going up. So I don't see schools, starting, in the near future because of the number of cases and for the safety of children. However, I think, I'm extremely happy that people have taken on to online teaching and learning, and remote, classrooms are going on extremely well.
Sure. So I think we are in the same situation in Delhi NCR. Right now, Delhi NCR has beaten Mumbai in becoming number 1 corona affected city. So I think we all are like grappling with this situation as but someone in is like a bit less or a bit more, but I think that we are all connected by virus today. So as we all know that the topic of the session is around blended learning, and we all, like most of the schools are adopting ICT as a tool. Virtual learning has started in most of the schools. The question I want to ask the panel, and thanks Dr. Usha Reddy for highlighting the fact that schools are not opening soon. We had our director from the CBSE in the morning inaugural session, and he was mentioning that informally he thinks, not officially, that perhaps even till October schools might not open. So this is the situation right now in India. So what are the key questions and key challenges which schools are facing? So if I may ask this and request each of the panelists to answer in about 2-3 minutes each. So let me request Mark to start with. Mark, how are you seeing the situation in Malaysia? The challenges.
Well, I think what I would want to preface my comments really with the fact that whilst I'm based here in Malaysia, throughout these months, I've been keeping in close contact and sort of keeping very aware of what's happening there in India, talking with a lot of educators there in India, also talking with educators in Dubai, in Mali, in the UK and the US as well a bit, as well as here in Malaysia, and right across to Hong Kong and China. And talking with educators in international schools in China was very interesting early on because, of course, they were the schools that were first affected. So they took the hit before everybody else. And they were the ones who finished up being the pioneers in many ways in terms of this leap to remote learning and things. As far as the remote learning itself, if we're talking about challenges, I suppose one little challenge that we have to acknowledge is that whether we like it or not, within some parents' minds, issues about the relative merits of remote or online learning have got, sadly and unfortunately, blended into this issue about fees and whether we're going to pay our fees and all of those sorts of things. That is sad. I think it's very sad indeed because they need to be separated as issues. Looking more specifically at the remote learning, I came across a very good model that was looking at this kind of a sort of a crisis situation where you leap into doing something very different as an organization or as a company. And it had 4 stages. Stage 1 was basically just initial reaction. And if you think in terms of Bloom's taxonomy, sorry, not Bloom's taxonomy, in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that was really just about looking after the really basic fundamental needs. Are people getting food? Have people got shelter? Do people have internet connectivity and all of those things? So the real basics. Then it was into a subsistence level as far as the education, which for most educators has been about taking whatever they did in the classroom and seeking to transport as much of that as possible online. Stage 3, I think, is an interesting one, and I think different schools are at different point on the line. But stage 3 is the move to deeper learning within the remote and online environment. And for that, one of the things that educators need to be doing is reconnecting with things that mattered to them before. The student as the center of what we do. Not the curriculum, not the stuff we teach, but the student at the center. And that includes things like differentiation and personalization. It includes how are we addressing aspects of mindset? How are we addressing issues of 21st century skill development? And all of those things. And then level 4 will really be taking it to the very highest level where we start to think longer term about how we use all of these opportunities because, you know, the old saying in politics, never let a tragedy or a disaster go to waste. There are opportunities in this for us to move forward in ways that we're never going to want to go back to what we had before. And that stage 4 is really about refining some of those things to the point where for some parts of our children's learning, the online and remote learning will be the best place for that to happen. And we'll never take those aspects back into the classroom. And we'll keep those aspects within the realm of technology and IT because that's the best way to serve our learners. So in brief, you know, I think that's where we are right now. And there are different schools who are at different stages, maybe through stage 2 and stage 3. And we all need to be working together to really progress education through stage 3 and into stage 4.
Fantastic. So thanks, Mark, for breaking this problem into various stages and describing how each stage looks like. So may I request Mr. Prabhakaran and Nair to give your views on this emerging scenario and how was the blended learning and remote learning emerging and what are the challenges?
Good afternoon, everyone. 3 months back, we have never thought of a situation like this. When we were closing down in March, we were thinking that we'll be back in April or May and rescheduled education will be on. However, things have changed. But the fact is that, like what we all educators think, whenever there are some challenges, there is an opportunity of learning as well. So most of the schools in the country has evolved. And if you look at the learning, intellectual aspect of it, the online learning, online teaching, virtual, using this as a platform has gone pretty well. And if you look at it, there is no shortage of resources in that field, and academic rigor is same, though screen timing and various other technical issues are there. But how so far people are able to manage, evolve, and go ahead with it. But if you look at the holistic aspect of education, especially schools on a boarding school background where you have a lot of physical activities, there are a lot of activity team events, because of course we are bringing our children to prepare for tomorrow, 21st century skill plus leadership, being a part of the team as well as leading team. These are some of the most important components of education. Slowly, we will cover it up, but those very important aspects of education is getting disturbed at the moment. And at the moment, we do not have much of a choice. We have to make the best use of these virtual platforms and get learning and teaching go ahead better and better. However, if it continues for a long period, definitely it's going to affect a lot of, it will go to impact a lot in general education. Of course, I strongly believe education is not just a percentage of marks. It's not just, writing up and putting up there in the paper. It is not grades. It is much more than all these things, development of personality, character, communication skill, teamwork, and all this. So slowly, we may have to think of one more component to this virtual learning in which we can accommodate those aspects also. At the moment, it's in the process of evolving. A curriculum transaction is well evolved, more or less clear. Everybody can agree that. That's how I look at it. But again, we are missing our students, and that face-to-face interaction is one thing which is very crucial between a guru and a shishya. That's what we are missing. Let's see. This too shall pass and we will overcome. That's the way I look at it.
Great points, Prabhakaranji, and your point about that right now we are just looking at curriculum online, but there are other aspects. How do we handle that? That's an important part. Requesting Dr. Jayshree Periwal to give your views on this.
We know that these are very difficult times. And what is education for? To teach our children adaptability, to teach our children skills. And we've got it sooner than we expected, because this world is going to, as it is, change very fast. And if we don't adapt and evolve, we'll become extinct like the dinosaurs. So what happens, we were very, very quick to adapt to technology. Though we are all social human beings and we like a nod, we like a pat, we like a little grin to a child, and that motivates them. But when the situations are such, then let's make the virtual world our world. And every time there is difficulty, there is determination. Wherever there is adversity, there will be opportunities. And whenever there are challenges, we do find solutions. That's what schools are meant to do, to teach our children this. So whether they are Google Classroom, Zoom, Microsoft, any other platform, using it to the fullest potential is necessary. Use extensions like Jamboards, Kahoots. This is technology that has been the keystone in allowing educators to continue delivering quality education during this pandemic. Since we've been leveraging technology in our teaching, even in the physical world, it was easy to adapt. We have innovated and are able to inculcate collaboration and interaction within the online teaching platform itself. The success of this allows us to believe in the future of blended learning modules. With new modules for conducting classes, examinations, assessing, classwork, leveraging and fully understanding artificial intelligence is the key solution. Currently, artificial intelligence is being developed, which will give us incredible information about our children. You know, when a child is a part of the class and when they look disinterested, what was the topic that was not delivered well? Which mode of study increased their attention span? Was it visual? Was it auditory, kinesthetic? We have read about Harvard Gardner, right? And now this is the critical data, once carefully studied and worked upon by educators, will lead towards enhancement in providing quality education to the future of the country. This is my opinion on, of course, it does have its own drawbacks. Not the entire India. We have digital illiteracy in parts of India. And of course, they do not benefit as much as the more elitist schools do. So I do feel bad, and I think the government must take up steps to educate and incorporate technology in education for every child around the country.
So, I think great points, Jayshree, and you have mentioned the point about digital divide and also the income divide, which actually makes the poor not having access to the good education in these times, especially. And requesting Dr. Education Vimal to please give your views.
Thank you, Dr. Ravi. Thank you very much. And let me begin by saying, there are certain changes which I feel that certain conceptual understanding and some conceptual changes which has happened due to this COVID thing, we need to look at them first. And one of the very interesting things till say March and before that, your say technological, your expertise are very much a desirable, I'll say the qualification for a classroom teacher in Indian context, fine, very much. But after post-COVID life and during this time, all of a sudden that desirable became essential qualification. That's the biggest shift, I guess, in terms of what we are looking for when we recruit teachers, when we are looking at the capacity building. This is the most important area in terms of looking at the teacher and their qualification. That's the biggest challenge, the biggest change. The second thing which has happened is, which we all need to understand, that things should not be like the complementary and supplementary words. Fine. Technology is here to complement. Technology is not here to supplement human being. Technology is not here to supplement human expertise. Technology is here to enhance and complement. So that's why as heads, as parents of young generation, we all need to understand that technology is here to complement people. And that's why the kind of, sometimes we hesitate involving technology. Sometimes we have all kind, especially in today's time, you can see parents talking about the online class is irrelevant, online class is not this. We need to understand that technology is here to complement education. Technology is here to complement learning. It's not supplementing kind of stuff. And that's why we need to accept this complementary nature of, technology in the education. Next part I'll say that's very interesting is, the learning culture. I would like to comment on this learning culture aspect. In India and most of the setup, like what happens, the owners, if you look at the classroom setup, fine, the biggest change what has happened, that your classroom setup was kind of an environment which is controlled by the teacher. And then within that control environment, students were there as a subset. So there was a bigger set, and within that set, students were there. So it was a very much controlled environment. And all of a sudden now, that controlled environment is broken. The people are out of that control environment. And that's why the owners of learning, because when the child is in your control environment, you are in better position to say, ensure that, the child must do the homework, child must, do the written work, child must do certain kind of and show certain kind of progression. But now your connection with the child is through the internet. And that's why now the learning culture has to change. Learning culture in a way, especially I'm talking about Indian context, where child has to take onus of his or her own learning. Fine. The job of a teacher is provide the information. The job of the teacher to create the pedagogy. The job of the teacher is to kind of, come up with a different kind of interesting things. But at the end of the day, the student needs to realize that it's my job to learn. You have to take the onus of learning. It's not like that, okay, I'm there, you teach me. Like, many parents, they also expect in the same line that, okay, you teach you have to teach. No. And same thing goes with the parents. For a boarding school aspect, we used to say that teachers are in loco parentis. Now in this context, and now the parents are in loco teachership, where they are doing the role of a teacher. And that's why the onus of setting up the physical environment where, the laptop is charged, the child is punctual, is there for the class, all these things, you can't take it by default that, okay, my son or my daughter will do that. That's another change in terms of cultural shift. I guess we all need to be very mindful, and parents need to be very mindful that they have to play a direct role in setting up of that physical environment for the student. That's again very, very important aspect as far as I'll say. And these are the challenges, because there are many parents, they feel that the moment they have given the laptop, their job is over. The moment they have provided, and they are limiting themselves in the role of provider, that my job is to provide certain things, and after that my role is over. So I guess this is again a huge cultural shift. And then definitely we need to unlearn few things, and we need to learn few things. Like, say for example, our assessment patterns. These are the biggest challenge. How to create a new assessment system, or new set of questions, new set of ways to assess our students, because the old way of assessing students is not going to work. So that's the biggest challenge. As far as I feel that, we have definitely moved from, somehow shifted the learning to the digital platform, but the assessment part remains still a very critical part in terms of our challenges, in terms of preparation for that. And the last and the most important thing, I feel that, you have to develop a certain kind of soft skill. You all need to work on that, because just looking at the screen, I must tell you that when I did my first webinar, and I did last for 3 months, the way now I talk, the way I go slow down, the way I pause, the way I look at the camera, everything had changed. So now you have to build your capacity. Build your capacity to be, I'll say, effective, and to ensure that you are engaging people through online. So that kind of training, that kind of capacity building modules are required. That needs to be included in your in-service training program. That need to be included in the pre-service training program. Once that is done, I guess the whole setup will change. But these are the definitely challenges in terms of how I see things. Thank you.
Great points, Dr. Vimal. You have given points about changing role of parents, teachers, and the overall school system, and also the children, how they have to adopt to the new culture of learning online. Let me request Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni ji to give your perspective on this situation.
Yeah, if I may take up from where my predecessors have spoken. First thing I want to just highlight is that everybody has suddenly fallen in love with technology. It's like being on a deserted island and you suddenly find you're washed up and nobody else is there. You see a very pretty woman and you get excited. Technology was always there. But technology was overtaken by inertia. And there was a reluctance to bring it into the minute-to-minute, day-to-day form. Many of the heads of schools were actually had to push their teachers to leverage technology. Just having a smart board or something is not technology. How you leverage that technology is the important thing. So those schools who were leveraging technology for face-to-face pedagogy would have found it easier to switch over to this online format. And yet they could have been in the trap of trying to replicate that into the online environment. because the pedagogy required for online learning is completely different from that for face-to-face learning. So therefore, that is the big, huge, big change. And when this pandemic, the worst of it is over and children start coming back to the physical campuses, there will be teachers will have to be able to harness the best of both. And one of the major shifts that's going to happen is there's going to be a huge shakeout in the education industry. Jobs will be chasing the good teachers, and mediocre teachers will be chasing the jobs. This is going to be a huge shakeout. That's one major change we need to look at. The second thing which I said was about pedagogy. Uncertainty is always there. There was disruption already in the air. The computers were around for the last 30, 40 years. But then computerization, it came into our banks and other places also. But it was primarily driven by information, that Y2K kind of phenomenon. But in the last 10, 12 years since the smartphone came and convergence of all devices came into one place, digitization became the key. Old analog systems gave way to digital systems. And with digitization comes data. And what Dr. Periwal was talking about, today capturing the data points of our students is very important. If you don't install a system by which you can capture every data point, then artificial intelligence will take you down the wrong path. Because artificial intelligence can only process what data you generate. So the system of capturing data of our students today needs to be put into place. And this is an area the educationists may like to pay much more attention to now. As far as parents are concerned, they are not really in loco teachers, because the teacher not only did the parenting in school, but they also did the teaching. You can't expect the parents to do the teaching. This is a specialized job. You can't, I can't replace a doctor, right? But what is needed to be put across to the parents, and this also rolls over into the realm of fees and other things, that parents must be made to understand that they are our partners. The parents and the school together is working for the good of their child. So the parents are partners. They are not mere paymasters. So they are paying, they're investing in the lifetime of their child. They're not investing in an experience that you've gone off to Orlando, seen, and come back. So that is a very important dialogue we need to have with parents. And I'm afraid in many of the litigations that are going on have missed this point in India. And finally, the point I wish to make is this, that there will be a growing divide between the great schools and the good schools in the years to come. Unless schools which are not so well endowed, either in terms of resources or in terms of advanced pedagogy and advanced leadership, do not reach out and have the humility to accept that there is a lot to learn and are willing to reach out and learn from others who are doing it better. Because otherwise, you will get left behind. And I'm telling you, there's a huge risk that after tier 1 towns, the next better schools may be found in tier 3 rather than tier 2. Because they have the hunger to learn and they want to grasp all the new things. Technology is a great leveler. You can reach out to tier 3 today as we speak. So therefore, it is very important for people on this panel who are extremely, come from very well endowed schools, come from very progressive schools, to offer their services pro bono to anybody else who's willing to come and learn from you. I mean, you can't go around preaching to the whole world. But if somebody is willing to come out to you, please invest in them. You will be investing in our collective good. So thank you very much.
Great points, Kulkarni. I think
very well
said. Very well said. I mean, you have actually hit the ball out of the boundary, and I think it will be a tough.
Nowadays, boundary is a bad word in the India-China context, by the way.
Yes. So
we are the brave soldiers. Our teachers are the brave soldiers, and we will not let any other country overpower us or any other parents overpower us and not giving what is due to the teachers and to the school. They must learn to pay the fee.
We have to educate them.
Yes, we have to educate them and engage them.
Engage the parents. You know, I always say you should have engaged parents, not enraged parents.
So, great point. And let me request the youngest on the panel, Harinder Chhabra, your views on emerging scenario. Harinderji.
Yeah, so I'll break it down to two portions. One is the impact on the school system itself. So Dr. Kulkarni, I think, I don't know what to say after this, but I'll still try to probably expand on what he said. And I'll also refer to what Mark said in the beginning. It is clearly a gradual movement towards stage 3, stage 4. As a school, we decided not to go. We took our time and we directly moved to stage 3. Yes, the parents were a bit apprehensive. It was new. It was all of a sudden there were uncertainties from various aspects, various different areas, jobs, livelihood, existence, scare, and then this entire thing of managing everything on their own, managing the household, managing the kids, managing their bosses online. We don't have devices. So many variables. Internet speed were an issue in the beginning. I think initially it was a big shock for everyone. We didn't want to add to the mayhem, and we decided to take a step back and plan for our post-summer vacation. And we directly decided to move to stage 3. Now, in terms of impact overall, I think this to me is a blessing in disguise. I think schools in general is not a very transparent entity, and I'm talking about in general. I'm not talking about everyone here, but in general, it's a very non-transparent entity. Parents don't know what happens inside the classroom. Parents are not given access to it, even if they ask for it, because there is a lot to hide. In terms of teacher quality, in terms of pedagogical quality, and therefore this has now been forced to be out in the open. So what Dr. Kulkarni was saying, that the quality will survive, and people who do not invest in giving the right quality of interventions to the children they have, I think they will be called out. So very clearly, the quality education will get a big impetus. People will become more serious about it, and which actually is good for our children. So that's one big change I see will happen. And he rightly said, good teachers will be sought after, and bad ones will be searching for jobs. Second thing I think is that because of this situation which has been thrust upon us, the adoption of technology has become very fast. In fact, I think years jobs have been done in these 3 months, not just in terms of learning how to do it, but in terms of mindset that this is an important aspect of the teaching learning process. So we as a school were already using it. So like he was saying that schools were already doing it, though we have classrooms. I'm not a believer in that. Leverages and enhances the teaching learning process, and at the same time does not bind the teaching learning process. So looking at that balance is very critical, and I think schools need to take that path. Yes, there's a lot of resistance to using a lot of technology, but then I think this adoption has been pretty useful. The other thing also I feel is that systemically it will make schools more accountable. It will make schools more accountable to the child. It was a lot accountable to the parents. I think this will make them accountable to the child, and child will become more at the center of what the schools do. And I think that's going to be a big change. From parent management, it will become parent management through child learning. So the path will change. It will not be a direct path. So you can't now tell a parent your child doesn't do this, your child doesn't do that in the class, because it's now there for everyone to see. So you can't hide behind that, right? You know what I'm saying? The other impact that it will have on the school system is that schools will now have to get very, very serious on teacher capacity building. You can't just go by fulfilling CBSE requirements and say, I've done this training 5 days a week, 5 days a year, and that's it. I've fulfilled your criteria. I think that's not going to be enough. Schools will have to become very, very serious about capacity building of teachers. And the final thing on the school side is that I think there was a lot of discomfort initially within the parent community about their increasing role in getting the child to learn, especially with the younger children, say age below 7, till the time they are completely independent to manage technology on their own, decide their own schedule for the day, etc. I think that came as a shock. More so because they were also engaging in other activities which they had to at that point of time. But I think this is settling in. The discomfort is slowly moving away. Parents are realizing that, and this requires a lot of discussion, that they are part of the process and they are not just outsourcing the jobs to schools. I mean, so that's another change. Coming to the student side, I think with this change, students will become more independent over time and take more ownership of their own learning process. I think they will develop more agency. They will focus more on self-learning, finding the answers to questions they have, become more curious maybe also. So that's one impact I see. I also see a lot of personalization happening from the school side for students, because technology would allow that to happen. It lends itself to personalization. The class sizes, I think, will have to be relooked to ensure students get the right interventions, and therefore the cost for schools to run online would be higher in terms of pure cost of teachers. So that's something I foresee. On what students will miss, very clearly there will be an issue around socio-emotional health of children. There will be issues around a lot of skill development, which is very interpersonal in nature, and also the impact of not being able to play sports and other physical activities in the school. I think that also will be there, which is where I think for the time being parents will have to come in and be with their children, get them to engage in these activities. So this is broadly how I see it happening. I've mostly talked about from private school space. The issues with public schooling system is very, very different. It's more the divide will become much larger, and it's a completely different discussion, and maybe even a longer discussion, because the issues there are quite different.
Sure. Harinder, excellent points. Thanks for highlighting them in a very, very elaborate way. And you mentioning about how you missed the stage 2 and straight away jump to stage 3. And also how the parents are also now adopting to this new situation, helping their children in adopting this situation. So let me request to Dr. Usha Reddy to give you a wish, please. Usha.
Thank you so much. I think, this pandemic has suddenly, turned our world almost upside down. And I think as educators, we were very quick to adapt. So I'd like to begin by first, congratulating every single teacher globally, because I do believe that they've been the frontline workers to ensure that learning never stopped. We may not have our physical classrooms, but remote learning has been ongoing and very effectively at that. So I do salute them. Then I also like to say, if Malala had said that one book, one pen, one child, one teacher can change the world, I think my sentence would be that one gadget, one click, and one mentor has surely ensured that we are changing the world, and we will continue to do so until things get back to normalcy. But my perspective is also that, overnight, I think the skills of teachers and students have got upgraded to a vast extent to ensure that we have been able to adapt and deliver to the best of our abilities. And, I think the learning has been very, very quick. And to give you a quick example, things like vocabulary, which we had never used earlier, we just decided when we were searching for the new tools to use, you know, you can use hip hop music and get the kids to learn much quicker. So there was a lot of fun, and we had to keep the kids engaged during lockdown. And, you know, when the teachers were surfing, we came like many other tools like Power My Learning, Mentimeter, and, you know, so many others. But I think what I'd like to focus on is when we're talking of blended learning and, you know, flipped classroom modules, which we were using much before the lockdown as well. I think the quantum of usage is definitely much more. So when I today talk of blended learning, it is not like what I understood the term, you know, before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, we had our physical classrooms, and one odd lesson, one odd topic, we would give it to the kids who would go through the topic, come back to class, and then the discussions would begin. But today, when I speak of blended learning, you know, it is a mixture of tech, you know, utilization of tools that we're doing. So, you know, I do believe that, you know, when you're talking of following a system like the 5E strategy that we do, because you have to have on and off screen time. So, you know, we follow a 5E strategy, which, you know, the first stage is of engage, where the teacher actually assesses online, you know, how much the children know. And then you get on to an exploratory stage, which is a totally student-led activity. They do not need to be on screen, where they read, they explore, they listen to podcasts, maybe use, you know, other forms, but not just glued onto the screen. And the third stage, again, when you start explaining, you get the kids back, understand what they've learned, and that becomes, again, an on-screen activity. So, you know, when we talk of blended learning, the fourth stage is, again, elaborate, where they can do it even off-screen and partially on-screen. So when you're saying, like, you know, student-led activity, teacher-led activity, you know, on-screen activity and off-screen activity, that takes a different new dimension of understanding of a flipped classroom module or blending learning. And then finally, you can evaluate in multiple ways. It's very heartening to hear that many of the speakers have said that, you know, online learning is going on. We belong to, you know, we are very fortunate to the, you know, schools which belong to the, you know, upper bracket of society. My heart goes out to those children in rural sector who are really dying to learn. The teachers want to teach and they're helpless. And this digital divide is something that, you know, I hope will get bridged shortly. Of course, government is making their effort. And even if the kids don't have smartphones, you know, most of them do have televisions. So, you know, they are starting off their lessons on television. Podcasts is another thing where you don't, you know, have to have the screen on, but you just listen to, you know, speeches, lectures, or recorded lessons of the children. So I think world over, people have now come to terms with, you know, how to go about it, how effectively to use technology. But definitely, I think there need to be checks and balances. Much that we all got swayed away with this excitement and surge of learning, you know, through technology. I think one thing that struck me is that as educators, we have to be extremely aware and cautious about how to also protect the children who now have internet and you know, and the devices, you know, within their fold. So it's our responsibility also to make sure that the checks and balances are made aware to parents, students, and teachers, and ensure that cyber safety is, you know, also looked into. So I think when we know that this is the only mode of learning right now, we have to continue. I feel I'd like to look at the positives of what has happened to all of this. You know, when you travel abroad and you listen to multiple students who are talking to you at university level, many of the Indian students whom I've interacted with have said, the vast difference that we find is that, you know, in Indian school education, much that we really appreciate everything that we got, because it's because of the solid foundation that we're here today in these universities. They do believe that, you know, there was a lot of spoon feeding, not original work, not being able to, you know, write their assignments by themselves and so on. I look at this as a positive time, where all educators actually have to motivate these children to become self-learners, come up with original thinking, and, you know, do their assignments, you know, without much adult intervention, but just a little bit of, you know, support system, I guess. So I find that there are a lot of things that are happening. And so it's time to actually celebrate this resilience that students and teachers have shown, and, you know, also the creativity and innovation that's been happening. And I think for me, the key distinguishing factor is for a child to do something totally independently, and then actually showcase that so the self-confidence goes up. when we are looking at balancing, you know, a lot of things through online learning, another thing that, you know, actually I've encountered with, you know, lots of children that I've been counseling is, you know, agoraphobia. I think watching too much of media, watching too much about what's happening, the deaths and, you know, and everything, they actually, you know, it's becoming a phobia. So, you know, once, you know, they actually have to get out of the houses and start moving, you know, I think there is this big fear of what is going to happen. It's like almost like an existential problem. So I think the psychological and emotional support that schools and educators need to give to the students must be tremendous. Let's not just focus on curriculum and blended learning, but I think this is what I think we need to focus on, because I think we have to now start redefining success and, you know, look at what more, and are all successful people actually happy people? You know, and what's coming to your rescue right now in a situation like this? How do we get kids to get the right habits, the, you know, the right perspectives of life, and, you know, kind of look beyond themselves and help within their homes? And, you know, that should become a habit to, you know, also take this even after the pandemic is done, to look at the larger perspective and become contributors to the community. So, you know, I think there's a lot of learning that's happening. And I think as educators, analyzing all this gives me a lot of pleasure, because I do see the positive side of things always. And, you know, I think I see that a lot of new things are happening too. And, you know, the education is disrupted for sure. And we will never get back to what it was earlier. And so I think we better, you know, adapt to whatever is happening now. But again, always make sure that the balance is maintained. Thank you.
Excellent points, Dr. Usha. Thanks for highlighting them. And as you said, that world will never be same again. So we have to adopt to this whole new situation, and very, very fast.
I just saw a question pop up. So could I just answer that about eye strain or something? It just popped up on my screen.
Let me finish this round of the panel, and
sure.
Then we take the questions. And I will also request all the panelists to actually look at the several points which people are raising on Zoom and also on Q&A. So if you want to address them in this next round, you can have a look at it. So requesting our last speaker of the panel, but not the least, Harish Sanduja ji, welcome, and your points about this issue. Harish ji.
Thank you, Ravi ji. I think the most important thing which I need to share, I think, is that in last 3 months, I think if you had asked this question to a school maybe 6 months back, and a parent would have wanted to get inside the class and observe every class in the school, schools would have never allowed that. But currently what has happened is, abruptly, everything has become completely transparent. Teachers are teaching in front of the parents. So there is a complete U-turn that has happened in the society. And this is something which is amazing. And it brings out a lot of details about what is happening inside the schools. And initially, I strongly believe that the schools were reluctant to embrace technology, though the technology was there always. I remember when I started correcting IB papers somewhere around in 2005. I think at that time, Scorus was there, and Scorus used to give us papers online. And we used to get the papers from Brazil, and I would correct it on screen, which was an assessment tool 15 years back. And it is such a powerful tool which is still available. And those I think teachers who definitely want to have that kind of technology, the technology is there and it was always there. We just need to kind of look around ourselves. And there are a lot of platforms which will leverage the problems that we are facing right now and will be the solutions. Now, one very important thing that happened in last few days was that when we started looking at the online teaching, we wanted some kind of understanding that how are we going ahead with it? Are we creating some kind of trouble, or we are able to kind of leverage the things as per the requirement of the children? So what happened in due course was that there is an in-house teachers training academy of research that we have. And in that, we wanted to understand how is the impact of online teaching. How are our teachers doing it exactly? So we ran a peer group survey, and we documented that entire thing to understand the processes of online teaching and learning. And if I'm allowed, I can share a piece of slide. I think I have 3-4 slides which I can share, which is a good learning for us. Raviji, you're not there? So in absentia, I can take your permission then? Okay, so what had happened was that we wanted to understand how an average private school teacher migrated to online teaching, and how are they doing in the core critical teaching skills while teaching. So what we did was that we observed teachers on the Zoom platform, how they are doing. So around 126 teachers were judged on a scale of 0 to 100. And there were certain skills which were procedural skills. So I'm just showcasing the procedural skill. Did not stick only to the lecture mode, but also had a PPT or a Word document or a video to share with the children. Teacher is well versed with the online teaching platform and handles class well. Now, mind it here that there are many times teachers who have videos on the screen, but they don't know how to share the sound of the video with the students. Because sharing the sound of the video with the students is a totally different ballgame. So whether the teachers are aware of that or not, teacher is aware and plans that the students are to be muted or unmuted as per the plan of teaching. So there was a score given to the teachers by their peers, and this was a complete exercise, and we went through it. And then when we went for the critical teaching skills, to my amazement, the teachers had been introduced with the online teaching platforms in last 3-4 months only. And their scores on the procedural skills were higher, whereas the scores on the critical skills of online or offline teaching skills, for example, a teacher encourages understanding and cooperation with students, bringing out the best in students through affirmation, or managing wrong responses appropriately for better concept clarity. Or a teacher is aware of different levels of questions as per the Bloom's taxonomy. Like the way you are asking questions in the class, the lowest order questions to be asked first, and slowly your order of questions has to increase. Now that we found that there was a serious gap still existing there. Now, interestingly, the procedural skills were picked up much faster, but the hardcore teaching skills continue to be a problem for the teachers. And I think, yes, the blended learning and teaching is happening, and there are things that we are trying to do. So we need to learn, I think, or teach our teachers to ask the right questions, do an analysis, identify the gaps that they think are there in the process of teaching learning, make the plan accordingly. This is more like thinking about design thinking and bringing it onto the table while you are actually teaching and bridging the gap. So I strongly believe that the ability of a teacher to connect and empathize on an online classroom is still an extremely important thing. And the language that the teacher uses to be proactive, and also it has to be, you know, teachers are still online, and many of them sometimes tend to kind of shame the children in public. So you can still threaten a child. So teachers have to be aware that you cannot do all those things. You can kind of look at certain ways and methods in which they need to behave and align themselves. And why it becomes more important now, because you are very much in public case. Earlier, if a principal was telling that to the teacher, and teacher was still in the comfort zone of a classroom where no one was still observing except the students. But now you become more public and you become more transparent. And the questions to have objectivity of knowing where is the flaw and understanding where the flaw in understanding lies. That's something I think the teachers must keep on asking online also, because it can be done. It is not impossible. You still can do it, which you were doing in classroom. So these skills are the core skills which I think if we can still build on with the teachers, I think we will be able to bridge on this particular aspect and will do much well in the process of online teaching. That's what I just wanted to share.
Sure. Excellent point, Harish, and you specifically have presented a very good case study about teachers' adoption. Mark, saying hi to your dog.
It's a cat actually.
Cat, okay.
Correct. She'd be most offended if you called her that.
Actually, she came in such a speed
Yeah. That was me
not
getting her out at speed.
Great. So, thank you, Harish. Excellent inputs and your study about the teacher's behavior. And the whole issue of classroom was a secret till now, and it is right now an open secret. And it's a total change of the whole situation. So, we have next 20 minutes of the panel left. And there are lots of comments and questions which are there on the screen. You can see on the chat and in the Q&A. And I will request each of the panelists to pick one of the burning issues which you can see what people are asking and raising points about, and answer them. Like, I can always ask questions, but I think it's a good idea to take up what people are asking. So, Mark, you want to give any comments on the questions being asked, and each panelist please speak about 2 to 3 minutes each, not more. We have to end at 3:30 sharp. Mark.
Yeah, I wanted to come in on a couple of points, one of which I've seen certainly has come through on the Q&A, and that's about the returning to physical school. A number of the panelists have talked about how much children are losing and missing out, how much the adults in schools also are missing out on not being physically in school. But I think there are some things that we need to keep in perspective. In the last week, there are a couple of statistics that came across my desk that kind of shook me and made me think quite seriously about this issue. The first one was a prediction from a US business organization that said that the return to offices for employees in American businesses and companies was going to average a cost of $18,000 per employee to return people safely to the workplace. The second one was a suggestion that for the schools, all the schools in the US, they would need extra funds to manage the return to school of 25 to 50 billion US dollars to manage the whole process safely to return people to schools. Now, putting aside all of those little nuances of the technical and scientific aspects about children and are they at risk, are they not at risk, how much are they at risk, the evidence still seems to be that a child can be a carrier of this virus, and therefore a child can carry it from their home into a school or from their school back into a home. And so there are a few things that we're going to need to be realistic about, especially when we're looking at the younger children. The kind of aspects of physical distancing that we can talk about in environments with adults, and I have to say, you know, a lot of Western places have shown that even adults are pretty thick and stupid when it comes to this stuff. And as a Westerner, quite frankly, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to be sitting here with a bunch of Asian friends. And I would say, I am so glad I'm in Asia right now, where, and for people in India, sometimes India can sit a little bit on a cusp between West and Asia. Asia has, I believe, an innate collectivism in the way people think. And when this virus came along and the messages were, we can all be safer if we all work together and we all think of not just ourselves, but we think of each other, That was a message that was able to resonate with Asians. Unfortunately, my Western friends are so hung up on their personal liberty that they will act and behave and talk in the most stupid and idiotic ways that show no regard for collective interest at all. When the adults can't get it right, then what should we really be hoping for with children? So that return to physical school is a massive challenge to get it right. And we have to remember that we've got to protect the educators themselves. I believe that one of the ways around this may be some form of working towards social pods that involve groups of families who agree only to mix with each other and socialize with each other. So as the case numbers start to come down, you start to have a situation where at least people are mixing outside their own home, but they're mixing within a confined circle. And if necessary, when those children go into school, when those children from those families go into school, they stay together. So you stop being hung up about all children in a classroom being of the same age, the same class, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got to have open minds about all those sorts of things. And the other part is, and a couple of my colleagues have been talking about accountability. There has been a tendency to want to shut parents out. Parents are trouble, they take our time, they're a nuisance. Those schools that shut parents out most are the ones who now have the biggest headache when it comes to stakeholder relationship. Those who've been open and have invested in that relationship of trust in the good times can now draw on the dividends that are there in the bank in the hard times. And I can say right back to the very first school I was involved with opening in Ahmedabad, people were shocked. We used to, we were a new school. We'd only been open a couple of months. We used to invite parents in to sit in classes. Occasionally getting some of the fathers to turn off their mobiles was a challenge, but we invited them in. We used to have them in for lessons just before lunchtime. Then they and their children and we, the management, would sit down and have lunch together. The school lunch, the school food, immediately deal with all those issues of parents saying, oh, my child comes home and says the food's bad. No, let's all sit down and eat it together. Then let's say it's bad. And then we'd sit and talk and they'd have the opportunity to say, look, in the classroom, I saw this happening. Or I saw a child say this and the teacher responded this. And they started to understand more about what we do. That opening up and transparency, as Harish said, it's now forced on us. But we've got to get used to it. But it also should be that we're ready to be far more open and transparent in the classroom as well as outside it. Those are a couple of my thoughts, and over to my colleagues.
Excellent points, and Mark. I think thanks for that perspective on the opening of the schools. I'm just worried about the time, so I'm requesting each of our next panelists to speak a bit briefly. But although I'm highly interested to listen to each of you, so requesting to do 3 minutes each. Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni, your comments.
Yeah, I just take up from where Mark left off, and this is about parent engagement. We are a boarding school, and many of my panelists are heading similar schools. Our relationship goes not into years, but into generations. Today, I have few students who are 6th generation students. So there is this whole relationship of trust and transparency, number one. That is the core. Today, I often say this, you will not send your kid out in the streets for 1 hour, all by themselves without somebody supervising them. But children are sent to us for 9 months in a year on full trust. So therefore, now that this pandemic is here, gradually we are coming to terms to live with it. Everybody's getting to live with it. And we are not falling down like 9 pins and every second person is falling on the streets and dying. Even amongst those who contracted the virus, there's a very high recovery rate. So after taking due precautions, right? And my colleagues here will vouch for this. We have all gone into self-imposed quarantines months ago, right? The kids were here. When the kids left for home, they'd already been in quarantine for more than 2 weeks. When parents came and saw the arrangements, actually some of them said that they were safer in our campus than at home. With the new protocols which are in place now, all arrangements are being made to cater for this. And what is the biggest fear or the biggest need? Social distancing. Social distancing has 3 forms. One is in the physical space. The other is in terms of time. You can stagger the time at which people are hanging around somewhere. And the third is the numbers, that how many people hang around with whom. Now, in your own families, you're not maintaining social distance. So therefore, when our children come back, and they'll come back sequentially, not at one go. Let us say in a dormitory, there was to be 8 guys. Maybe there'll be only 3 now, 4, depending on the hygiene facilities available to us, right? After the quarantine period is over, those 4 people will be a family unit. There'll be no restrictions on them. So what we as human beings are used to, the social connect, will be restored. So it is my pet theme, and I've been articulating this with parents, and I hope I'll convince them someday, that we need to have a healthy balance of social distancing with socializing, while taking all reasonable precautions. You can do both. You can do socializing and you can do social distancing in nominated groups, not at random, right? And ultimately, especially for day schools, my recommendation is, once you have all your safety protocols in place, please invite a group of parents to your school and conduct them around and tell them what is it that you're looking for, which gives you a higher sense of safety at home than in our school environment. And it's my open statement I'm making, a responsible statement, that once all things are in place and all students come in with, and after the due quarantine periods are over, a boarding school will be a safe haven, which is safer than at home. And I have colleagues here who are boarding school heads. They can disagree or, or support what I'm saying. Thank you, Mr. Gupta.
Excellent point about having safety in schools and boarding schools having better safety standards. Of course, it's a controlled environment. And yes, may I request our next speaker, Mr. Prabhakaran Nair, to speak about this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Ravi Gupta. I start where General Kulkarni left. My personal feeling is, with reference to this COVID-19 situation, there is too much of hype made out of it. Definitely, the schools are going to reopen. We have to follow this blended learning and teaching. The online resources and online technology should continue, even if the schools are going to reopen. That's there. But however, if you look at the condition in India and compare the world in Indian context, the fatality rate is hardly 3.4 to 4%. And I'm not looking on a different way. And other side of the story is, this even after reopening, this virus is going to be there in the air. We have to use our sensible decisions and specific safety procedures, health and hygiene method to cope with it. Definitely, the post-COVID scenario is going to be completely different. As most of the panelists mentioned it, human beings have got amazing ability to adapt and evolve. And that process of evolving from one setup to other setup is going on. Learning and teaching is taking a different level. And there is, except in some parts of the country, especially if you actually look at it, we talk about the group of elite schools, there is a digital divide. We also have to contribute our own share with the government to support and minimize that digital divide, or rather to help to sort it out. That is one thing which we can do. But otherwise, the schools are going to reopen and we're going to come back to normal. And even when we come back to normal, the blended learning technique will continue. And this online virtual learning is going to be a boom, since we have used this platform in a critical situation, that we never let this COVID-19 to disturb our education, disturb our learning and teaching. This process will continue. I'll answer to 2 questions which is asked by a few members. Do you feel change in the examination assessment system of the students? Yes, there is going to be change in the assessment system and learning system. because very often these multiple questions and questions which are based on direct answering will change, because in online assessment, also in coming various levels of assignment, it is more like skill based, based on individual thinking rather than a set pattern. It has to change, and it will change. And one more question I'll add, one more answer I'll answer to this question. Do you think education system should change from primary, that is first standard, to 10th standard, and also to college 11, 12, senior college level? And will it change for all the exams, including other competitive examination? Look, change is inevitable. And look how we have evolved over a period of 3 months. And next 3 to 4 months, it is very unpredictable. And definitely, we as human beings have got an ability to evolve and embrace a change. And this will be a positive change. And infrastructural support and intellectual thinking will help us, intellectual way of tackling with it will help us to move into the next stage. And definitely, one disturbing question which is there, when is the school going to reopen? One more question is there. Definitely, I would like to see that, I'm expecting it's going to be by third week of August or September, because education is a state subject. It's in concurrent list. Quite a few states like Maharashtra has already planning to reopen schools by July or August. And very often I have a feeling that this will build up over a period of 6 to 8 months, and things are going to come back normal. But again, the experience which we have learned, the ability which we use to evolve this critical situation will take us through to next level of learning and teaching. Thank you, Mr. Gupta.
Excellent points, Prabhakaran. Thank you so much. And may I request Dr. Jayshree Periwal to give your comments on any of the questions, and if you want to talk about any opportunities also. Yeah. Briefly. Just unmute yourself, Jayshree. Yeah.
I think what I want to say that we have to tell ourselves and tell each other that this pandemic is going to be here. So how do we learn to deal with it? Probably we'll have to stagger our children and get them to school with all safety precautions. 2 days the senior children come, and 2 days the middle school, and then 2 days the primary school. And then they stagger and enjoy and mix with safety measures taken, and they're not overcrowded in a classroom. But what if this pandemic comes back again in November? Then what when there are floods, there are rains, it's heavy winters, terrible summers, or there's pollution level in Delhi that rises? So again, technology will come in handy, and that's where the blended learning will come, that you learn in your physical school for 2 days and you learn online, sitting at home in the comfort of your home 4 times. You do your collaborative learning amongst each other, even if you're sitting continents away from one another. These are things that the time has taught us. We've learned to adapt. Our children have learned how to face these challenges and how to make the best use possible. Get guest speakers to come and speak to your children. Get mental health experts to be in touch with your children. Talk about cyberbullying, because it's going to be the need of the hour. Teach your children the do's, but teach them better the don'ts. These are things that we must make our children aware and then act accordingly. And mine is a day school as well as a boarding school. So the challenges are even greater. If it is not safe for day school, it's not going to be safe for the boarding school. If it's not safe for the boarding school, how is it going to be safe? So these precautionary measures, the safety measures, we're working very, very hard to keep the environment safe and welcome the children back and give them a nice hug, a discerning eye, a pat on your shoulder, and they're all going to be happy in our folds. Looking forward to have the children back. I don't think we are going to open before October. That's my prediction. It's not opening before October.
Okay. Excellent inputs, Dr. Jayshree, and thanks for this comment about we are missing the children. I think children are missing the schools. I have a daughter, and she's like every day she's talking about when is the school going to open. So it's a both ways, I think so. And let me request Dr. Vidukesh Vimal to give your closing remarks briefly.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. One thing I must comment that all of us, the kind of discussion we had is very, very fruitful discussion for in fact, enriching experience for me to listen to the colleagues on the panel. It was a wonderful experience. As far as the closing remarks, I must say, look, certain things, the way we talked about teachers and the closed environment, and they've been kind of, there's a reverse to that as well. The reverse to that is the way our society look at teachers, the way our society prioritize education, through some ways of our parents, through some ways of media response to certain things. Those things are also coming up in open. How we look at what is our priority? How we look at say teachers? Do we actually look at do we see them as professionals like doctors or engineers? Because the moment our understanding of teaching, the moment our understanding of education that is clear, then I feel that there's so many conflicts with what we are talking about in the community. The conflicts about, say, fees, the conflict about, say, all kind of litigations happening in the. I think those things will be sorted out. Very much it will be sorted out. But unfortunately, I think it also shows our priority as a society, that where we keep our teachers, where we keep education. Because one of the question is, there's so many tutors available in the market. Then what is the need of say school and teacher? And I'll say, look, school and teachers will never become redundant, because education is not about just knowing kind of certain subjects and certain concepts and moving on. Education is a very holistic approach. Education is a very holistic concept, where your emotional well-being, your social well-being, everything needs to be developed, everything needs to be looked after. And that's why I personally feel that the way it has exposed the quality teachers and their weaknesses to the world, this pandemic has exposed our society's approach and society's priorities. And we need to, I guess, through this forum, I must say that we need to correct our priorities. Education can't be at the bottom of our priorities. It should be at the high order in the priority. That's A aspect. B aspect, as far as General Kulkarni said, and Mr. Nair also mentioned, that trust is the key. We need to trust each other. Patience is the key at this moment. We need to be patient with each other. We need to have forgiveness in our behavior on a daily basis. We need to forgive people when you are going haywire. These are the soft skills, I guess. These are the human values we need to show it to the world. We need to show it to each other. That will make our life better. And at the end, I must say that as boarding school headmaster, I feel that everyone needs to understand the COVID and Corona is, if a known person goes to unknown zone, when you are in a known zone, say for example, you are in your family, in your house with 3-bedroom flat, or you are on a 300-acre campus, it's almost the same concept. You are safe and everything is taken care of if you're in a known zone. So boarding schools, as Mr. Kulkarni said, and Mr. Nair said, is going to be the safest heaven. I'm very confident about it. Thank you.
Excellent inputs, Dr. Vidukesh, and this point about known to unknown. What we are moving into is the unknown zone, where we are all grappling with a new reality. Thank you. And Harinder, Chhabra, I want to ask you that you are a new school, as I understand, and do the newer school have different challenges than the older schools? You can comment on that part.
Yes, the challenges. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So yes, the challenges are quite different. Fortunately, for us, as a school, we focus a lot on ensuring that parents who come to us for admissions for their children share the same philosophy as the school does. We're not choosy, but then somehow through the process of interactions, during the process of admissions, we have been able to have a very strong connection with parents after that as well. And philosophically, there's a lot of alignment on what education should be and how, even in these times, it should be, carried out. So that way, I think, because the numbers are low, we're fortunate to be able to have the ability to engage with everybody at a very, very deeper level. And therefore, probably the challenge for smaller, newer schools is much less, provided the focus is on quality delivery. So that way, yes, the challenge is different. The other point about the expectation of schools, personally, I don't think we can generalize. I think cities will take calls depending on what the situation is. Probably metro schools, Delhi NCR schools would be open much later because there's a lot of movement of people coming in and going out of metros. A lot of people coming in from various states. So therefore, metro schools would probably be one of the last ones to open. I don't know what date, but I personally have a feeling that we might not open this academic year. Not we as in my school, but schools in general in large towns, especially the tier 1 cities. So this is the situation today is going to stay for long. I think it'll last quite a few months, and all of us have to gear up for that, plan accordingly. And I agree with my colleagues who run boarding schools. It'll be easier to control, the spread or control the spread of the virus there. It will be much safer because you can control everything. Once the children are in post-quarantine, I mean, it's okay. But in our cases, in day schools, children come in and go out every day. The parents are coming and going out every day, meeting the children every day. So the complexities are much higher. So those are the two points I would like to make.
Sure. Excellent inputs, Harinder. Thanks for that. And may I request Dr. Usha and Reddy to give your closing remarks briefly?
So, I think when it comes to reopening schools in cities, like my colleague just mentioned just now, my co-panelist, I think it's going to take a long while. And I think personally, even if it does, though schools will take all the precautionary measures and will do the required training for all the personnel and everything else, I think we would still like to leave it as a choice for parents, because this is a personal choice whether you want your kid to still go in. Let's say schools reopen in 4 to 6 months. I think for this entire academic year, we should leave it as an option to the parents. Schooling will go on, teaching will go on, learning will go on, but whether they want to come back physically or stay at home and do the online mode, I think that flexibility must always be open. Because I think each parent's mindset is different, their situations are different. And there is no harm in just being a little more flexible and open-minded as schools to, just, open your arms to the ones who are going to come, because we're already missing them. But for those of them who are a little skeptical, I think so be it. They can still continue to learn. But like I said, like schools, we are missing the kids. Teachers are dying to get back to work. But I think, and the kids are definitely wanting to get back. But I think the people who want schools to open the most are the parents, because they are finding it quite a challenge, to monitor their kids 24/7. And in my perspective, they've actually understood a teacher's role more effectively now. And a lot of appreciation is coming because they know the kind of hard work that has gone on in the past, which is getting recognized now and in these difficult times. So, you know, let's just keep our fingers crossed that everything is back to normalcy. And, you know, that all over the world, we've seen schools have been opening and again shutting, you know, but it's not like, you know, like in Hyderabad, I can say banks have reopened and then they were shut because of the spread. I don't think we want that in school, and we don't want to take that risk. So I'm sure the government is very cautious about when to open schools. But, you know, honestly, if you ask me, I'm not as worried because I think the learning is going on. And I think people have come to accept that, yeah, this is the way it's going to be for some time. But we wait and hope that surely quite soon things will be back to normal.
Excellent points, and your point about that banks opening and closing again, because the situation is unpredictable. So we have to be very, very cautious in these situations. And thanks for again highlighting the importance and the role being played by the teachers in these times. Hats off to all the teachers who are working very, very hard for this. Thank you. And Harish, you have the last words in the panel. So you will actually conclude the session here. So closing remarks.
Thank you. I think I'm going to be brief because I can see that we are almost kind of infringing the time of the next session. So I would to say that this is a golden opportunity for all the schools to push the idea of learning to learn. Ravi ji, you have changed your entire business proposition in last 3 months because you have taught yourself how to shift yourself from physical platforms to online platforms. This ability of yours, which has made you relevant, is a very crucial ability that we need to teach our children. And learning to learn is one of the top priorities of education. And I think it is a golden opportunity for us to teach our children that they have to take responsibility of their own learning. And that responsibility of their own learning can come when we shift that responsibility to them and more ownership onto them. And definitely schools need to look at different ways of assessment. Do not keep on thinking on the assessment modes that you were into. We need to look at collaborative platforms. There is nothing wrong in asking children to make a presentation, collaborate amongst themselves, critically think and analyze each other's presentation, do peer evaluation, and that can be something which can get them to give marks which can go into the report card. What's wrong in that? So we just need to change and shift the entire paradigm and think again. And I think this is a golden opportunity to do all that. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Harish. I think you are talking about the opportunities, and this is very, very important to look at these things in the opportunity in the times of very difficult situations. So let me thank all our eminent speakers. I think this has been a very enriching session, learned a lot from each of you. And we at Elets and Digital Learning have been for the last 15 years publishing this magazine and about education and looking at what are the innovations which are happening in India and outside India. And we are doing these webinars to get a sense of what's going on and help the teachers and the various schools who are in various geographies inside India and outside India to learn about how are the other schools dealing with these situations. So I thank Dr. Jayshree Periwal, Mark Parkinson's, Prabhakaran Nair ji, Harish, Dr. Usha Reddy, Dr. Vidukesh Vimal, Harinder Chhabra ji, and Lieutenant General Surendra Kulkarni ji for joining us in this amazing panel, exciting panel. Thank you so much. And I will looking forward to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure. Thank you, Ravi Gupta. Absolute delight.
Thank you so much.
Love to connect with each other. Please do that for us. It was a pleasure engaging with such educators of such high esteem. I would love to be in touch with everybody.
Yeah. Jayshree, lovely to see you after so long. Thank you.
Yeah.